Story 1. 2 weeks after I met my wife, I told her I was going to marry her. We were married for 44 years until she passed away 5 months ago. Story 2. Whenever I am stressed or upset, I seek him out. Just being near him keeps me calm and safe. I am most content when we are together, simply relaxing. We do not even need to talk. Story 3. My first love was my friend at the time, but I had a strong crush on him. We were 16. My parents were away for the night, and my mom called him to let him know I would be home alone and that I was working and catching the bus in the dark. He came over to check if I was all right. We ended up talking and laughing for most of the night. It was a beautiful connection. We eventually got tired and fell asleep together on my bed, fully clothed. He was the perfect gentleman, even at 16. Felt like something out of a movie. I will never forget that night. Story 4. From the moment I saw her at a party, I knew I needed to be a part of this woman's life and for her to be a part of mine. I met my wife at a Lonely Hearts Valentine's Day party 14 years ago. Initially, I thought she was too good for me and figured it would be a short-term relationship, at best 6 months to a year. But I was smitten. She was all I could think about for weeks before our first date. I realized I was desperately in love with her, and just being near her felt like a privilege. I know it sounds cliché, but it wasn't like that for me. I understood she could do better and that I would have a hard time holding on to her. During our first date, she even told me she never wanted to be with a military man, and I had been in the military for about 4 years at that point. Well, long story short, I did manage to hold on, and it has made me a better man. We have been married for 11 years this year. We grew up together, being 21 and 20 when we met. We've experienced trauma, financial hardship, fear, and loss together. Throughout all of it, we supported one another and built a friendship that annoys our other friends. Story 5. We had been dating for a while, maybe 3 or 4 months. I really liked her since we started dating. But one day I was driving and looking at her in the passenger seat with a sunflower in her hair, and I just knew. We've been together for over 12 years now and married for 7. Story 6. When I was lying on the couch, out of nowhere, he licked my face and wagged his tail on his first day home. Story 7. That is a tough one. I believe most people mistake their first love for their last, and their last love for their first. Time simply rearranges the labels. Story 8. When I had a chicken and steak quesadilla, I had never felt such love before in my life. Dear chicken and steak quesadilla, I love you. Story 9. I was so accustomed to that person that I didn't even know I was in love until her absence made me realize it. Story 10. I knew I was in love, but what really resonated with me was that my partner encouraged me to pursue my dream. This dream put stress on our family and our relationship, yet I saw my partner taking care of everything so I could follow my passion. Love isn't just butterflies, hugs, and kisses. It's unwavering support and encouragement to be your true self. Story 11. When I started automatically including my partner in my future plans without even thinking about it, if just became when. I realized they were in love the first time I made a joke like, "It's not premarital sex if you never get married." And they looked at me like a kicked puppy and asked quietly, "Never," in a dejected voice, then tried to play it off. Story 12. I was changing my sheets. All the time, I was thinking about how to tell this young lady I met online that she really needs to look elsewhere. There was no way I was in the market for anything romantic. Then something in the back of my mind said, "But this feels really nice." I allowed that idea to come to the forefront, and suddenly, an indescribable feeling washed over me. I was in love, deeply and completely, for the first and last time in my life. Our 30th wedding anniversary is in August. Story 13. Started September 2024. There is this one girl in my class whom I found very pretty. I initially thought it was strange because my view of her was different from my previous crushes. At first, I didn't mind it because I thought I only liked her looks. After a few weeks or months of constant eye contact, I was still too scared to make my move until November. Then February came, and I confessed my feelings to her. I expected her to ignore it, but I was wrong. After my confession, we became really close. We talked every day, constantly updated each other, and maintained eye contact. In April, she told me she had a boyfriend after entertaining me for 2 whole months. Instead of getting mad or blocking her, I comforted her and told her it was okay because we were only friends. We continued talking as we used to, still updating each other. Then halfway through April, something changed between us. After a few days, we still talked, but it wasn't the same. Our last conversation lasted only 5 minutes. A few days later, she blocked me on both accounts we used to communicate without explanation. It's been almost half a month, and I'm still waiting for her to text me and explain why she did that. This is the first time I have truly fallen in love with someone who wasn't able to reciprocate those feelings. It still hurts, even though there was never an us. Story 14. I think the first time I realized I was truly in love was during adoration one evening. I know that may sound very church-focused, but it was a moment when I felt immense peace and an overwhelming sense that love was not just a feeling. It was a choice, a gift, and something far deeper than anything depicted in movies or books. Story 15. He was there for me when my grandfather passed away. We had only just started dating, but he drove me 4 hours home and back, and that was the first time he met my family. On the way back to our college, he stopped to get gas. It was raining, and he ran inside the gas station to get me a coffee, even though I said I didn't want anything. Story 16. We just fit together like perfect puzzle pieces. It may sound cliché, but it's true. We met, connected, and 2 weeks later we were together. 2 months after that, he moved in, and 3 months later he proposed. 6 years later, we had a baby. 3 years later, we had a second baby. And 3 years after that, we finally got married. We always felt very comfortable together. I think the fact that we never argue without shouting or screaming at one another helps a lot. But yes, you just know. Story 17. When I genuinely missed them after being apart for a couple of weeks, I couldn't wait to see them again, and I felt that it was truly reciprocated. I have never felt that way with anyone else. Story 18. She hurried across a busy street in Denver, but cars were coming, so I had to wait to cross. She had a Four Loko in one hand and a bag of barbecue Lay's chips under her arm. After she crossed the street and saw that I hadn't made it with her, she yelled out, "Sucks to suck!" My heart swelled, and that's when I knew. Story 19. I felt a tickle inside when I met him, and I was really shy for the first time looking at such a wonderful person. It felt instantly safe for me. I am still learning about what a wonderful guy he is from the depths of his soul. Normally, as a confident, bold, and highly defensive woman in dating, I now feel soft, gentle, loved, and deeply understood. It hits me every once in a while how much I truly am in love. Story 20. When I wake up, I think of him. When I call other people by his name, when I want to share my day with him, I am lucky enough to be his wife. Story 21. When he peeked his little head around the door, not knowing he was allowed on the bed, I love my little dog so much. Story 22. What a cute question. People should be more positive. I am so invested in this. Personally, the first time I realized I was in love was when I locked eyes with him for the first time ever. Story 23. When she inspired me to become a better person, all I wanted was to protect her from the world by any means necessary. However, I immediately left once it happened because, in my opinion, love can be toxic. Story 24. When my dog had to be put down, I thought I was having a heart attack. I truly loved that animal. Story 25. I liked a lot of girls back then, but it was different with her. I was happy just being around her. We're getting married this year, a decade later, so I think it worked out. Story 26. She made me realize who I really am and made me feel like I mattered for the first time in my life. She has done so much for me, some of which she probably doesn't realize. It has come to a point where I can't imagine my life without her in it anymore, and I couldn't be happier about that. Story 27. When I was 14, I had my first kiss. The relationship lasted for years. Eventually, I couldn't understand why he wouldn't say, "I love you," or express his commitment. My mother found out I was dating him and made me promise to end the relationship, so I did. Not long after, I went on vacation and met my children's father. My old boyfriend called and said he was going to take time off work to come pick me up, even though I was states away. I told him it was too late because I had met someone else. A couple of years later, I saw his sister in a working environment. She began talking about him and said, "We have never really talked, but I knew all about you. You broke my brother's heart. He showed our family the ring he was going to give you. When you told him you had moved on, he went to the bar and got drunk while staring at the ring all night. I had no idea he was going to propose. Had I known, I would have waited, but things happened for a reason." Years later, I received a phone call from him. He said, "Come back to me, and I will raise your son as my own." I told him I was now expecting my second child. He responded, "I will take care of all three of you." I explained that I was happily married. I honestly probably should have taken the chance with him because I only had 2 children, so that wouldn't have changed. He is a very successful person, and my marriage with my children's father broke me. Nevertheless, both men were important to me, and even though things turned out the way they did, I have no hard feelings and hope they are both well and enjoying their lives. Story 28. I watched her walk back to her car, and as she got in, she looked at me and smiled, which absolutely melted my heart. Story 29. Our first year of marriage was challenging. We used to fight frequently, and I thought it would not work. However, we both decided to understand each other and genuinely try. One day, my husband made a joke while driving, and I laughed harder than I had in a long time. I saw the same man I fell in love with, and suddenly everything he did became cool, funny, smart, interesting, and intelligent. I fell in love all over again, and now I keep falling more in love with him every day. He is my life. Story 30. She made me feel safe. I wanted to be better for her since I could feel she saw something different in me that my depressed self couldn't. I thought of her every time I had a happy thought. It never worked out, though. We're just friends. It's been almost 9 years, I think. Story 31. Every time I experienced something beautiful, I wanted him to be there. I felt protective of his happiness. I was so interested in him that I could have earned a PhD in his psyche from how deeply I studied him. We could make out for 3 hours and it felt like 20 seconds. Story 32. When I constantly thought about getting back home and taking my dog for a walk while at work, I missed my goofy furball. Story 33. About a year into our relationship, which already had many unusual obstacles, we had an argument, and she left angrily since we lived in different places. That moment clicked in my mind, and I realized that, even though we were upset, I didn't want to see her leave my life. She was essential to everything I envisioned for the future. I understood that this was more than just teenage love. We just celebrated 25 years of marriage this week, so I guess we are doing well. Story 34. We had a fight on vacation. I left the hotel and returned to an empty room, panicking. I ran all over town looking for him and even ended up at the airport because I was convinced he had abandoned me. I returned, frantic and disheveled, to the hotel and found him waiting for me with expensive jewelry and a cake from a famous bakery to apologize. I hit him in the face and then cried in his arms. Story 35. I let him sleep on my lap as he cried about his cryptocurrency loss. We are no longer together, but he made me feel loved. Story 36. When she wanted to come to college early to study with me, we were just friends who needed to study hard to achieve a higher grade in the course. We spent 5 hours studying before the exam. As soon as she submitted her paper and left, I found myself yearning to submit mine half completed just to join her. That's when I realized I was in love. Story 37. When I wanted to have his child, I was always indifferent about having children, but I desired to have my husband's baby and raise a family with him. Story 38. When we were lying in bed cuddling, I felt extremely safe and happy, and I couldn't stop thinking about how amazing he is. Unfortunately, he didn't feel the same way about me. Story 39. I suppose it's the little things. I realized I would be happy if he is happy and sad if he is sad. I feel overprotective of him, worry about him, and prioritize his well-being. There is also the pain that comes with realizing you are not regarded in the same way. Story 40. When I realized that the idea of marriage and children didn't sound so bad if I was doing it with him by my side. Story 41. When I was around her, everything felt right. It didn't matter what we were doing. It felt more like home. I realized it was love when my brain just clicked, as if saying, protect her. She's a keeper. I don't know what my life would look like without her. Even though it didn't work out, I learned so much about life and who I am, and I'll always be grateful. It's just really hard for me to move on after feeling this way. The only downside is the struggle to let go. Story 42. When I felt safe and at peace in his arms and being around him, I realized he is the love of my life. I have never felt that with anyone else. Story 43. When you take time out of your day to spend with your significant other, it should feel enjoyable and fulfilling. The time spent together can be the most enjoyable activity you choose. Story 44. My dog made me learn what real love is for the first time, despite having a couple of ex-boyfriends. I just want him to always be happy and would do anything I can without wanting anything in return. Story 45. I used to be very shy with him at first. Seeing him was so exciting, and it truly felt right and perfect. Story 46. When I couldn't stop thinking about her and the activities we could enjoy together, she was my first childhood love. Story 47. The butterflies weren't just in my belly. They extended from head to toe. She walked past me earlier, and 10 minutes later, approached me from a distance for a chat. Her body was bathed in sunlight, and she kept her eyes half shut because of it. Her skin had a warmer tone, and her dark blonde hair shimmered like gold, every comb stroke visible in her boyish haircut with swept bangs. 2 days later, I was chatting with her again. She gave the most genuine sweet smile, her eyes fitting perfectly with it. She noticed I got embarrassed, but she must have thought it was about the topic. Instead, I had fallen in love again with the butterflies, particularly with her eyes that time. I didn't tell her then. I was waiting for the right moment that never came. Story 48. It is difficult to define. Infatuation and love are very close. There was a strong attraction, but once we started dating, it felt solidified. I thought about them all the time. I couldn't imagine my life without them. However, terrible circumstances tore us apart. I still think about it. I have never been able to recapture that feeling, except in dreams. The numbness of the memories dulls anything similar. Story 49. It happened like a scene from a movie. My girlfriend at the time came over and brought her friend, whom I didn't know. When she turned the corner, everything went into slow motion. She seemed stunning, and I still remember that even 20 years later. Story 50. At first, I felt tense, anxious, and constantly worried about him. That's when I first thought I was in love, but it was actually my trauma and anxiety issues flaring up because I was slightly interested and attracted to him, not genuinely in love. So I fought the feeling to protect myself. It wasn't until I realized I wanted to address my issues and endure all the discomfort to give this a fighting chance that I knew the infatuation had turned into genuine love. This became clear when I spent hours searching online for the perfect bathrobe and a specific kind of juice, as a gift for his birthday, knowing he was a fan of the series The Sopranos. Sorry to disappoint, though, he didn't feel the same way. Story 51. When I was content with putting my dreams aside because I could imagine my whole life with this girl, I didn't care how my life turned out as long as I was spending it with her. I had always been against marriage, but I wanted to marry her. I wanted to move away, but I didn't want to move away anymore. It was a fantastic time. I felt good about who I was, and I was, as I would now say, relaxed. I didn't stress about anything. Sadly, it didn't work out. I am still in love with her, but I don't have romantic feelings for her anymore, if that makes sense. There is a deep connection and a special place in my heart for her. I just hope she is living the life she always wanted and that she is doing well. I can't thank her enough for the wonderful time we shared together. Story 52. I have had several relationships, but I have only truly been in love twice. My ex-wife was the first. We started dating and I fell deeply in love. She occupied my every waking moment. We were together for 16 years. The second time is with my current partner. We were set up on a blind date. I put my arm around her shoulder, and it instantly felt right. A few weeks into seeing each other, I knew she was the one. We have been together for 23 years and counting. Story 53. I was pretty sure of this before, but when we spoke on the phone for the first time, hearing his voice felt like my heart remembered him, even though we had never met. I can't describe it except as intense familiarity, making me feel whole again, even though I hadn't realized I wasn't whole before him. We met for the first time last month, and I was right. It's him, and it will always be him. Story 54. We were standing near the bank of a river, having fun, laughing, and talking. She was my best friend at the time, so that was normal, I guess. Then she suddenly looked upset, and when I noticed, I immediately felt a pain in my chest that didn't go away until I made sure she was okay again. She actually had feelings for me the entire time, and I knew, but I was attracted to someone else and completely forgot about that person after this moment. There was also a time when we were walking together. I saw the sunlight hit her at just the right angle, illuminating her beautiful brown eyes, gorgeous curly hair, and magical smile. I felt that familiar feeling in my chest where I just wanted to hug her tight and never let go, and I found myself smiling like an idiot. If anyone is interested in knowing the rest, I ended up confessing my feelings a little while later because I wanted to make sure it wasn't just attraction. I planned to ask her out on January 18th, but 2 days prior, she told me she had completely lost feelings for me. When I begged for a second chance, she said she already liked someone else and left me on the 16th. That was the worst night of my life. 0 out of 10. I would never recommend it. Story 55. Oh boy, I'm so madly in love right now with my boyfriend. It's hard to put into words. None of them feel big enough to capture how I feel. Let me tell you how I knew. To preface this, I was a very closed-off child from a neglectful family. I was suicidal and had decided I wanted to end my life. I stopped caring about anything or any future until I met my boyfriend. This man is amazing. If you've ever heard of a golden retriever boyfriend, my man is the ultimate version. He is so sweet, caring, and honest, and he is full of love. We would do anything for each other. Within days of meeting him, I felt so many feelings I thought I had lost. I felt like the child I used to be had come back. I laughed until I lost my voice for days. I smiled and cried, which I had never done in front of anyone. I became immediately talkative and loud and felt so free from anxiety and calm. I suddenly wanted a family and kids, even though I never thought I would make it there. We would stay out until 2 a.m. every morning, even though he lived on the other side of the city. We said we loved each other within days and moved in together within a few months. I feel happy, secure, and more normal than ever. To this day, we have never had an argument or yelled at each other. If we have something to discuss, we do so out of love, never out of anger. I can't wait to marry this man one day. Story 56. It is an incredible feeling. Whatever this person does is beautiful. They could be falling headfirst into the mud, and you would still be enamored by them. Story 57. Spending time together felt completely natural from the start, with no awkwardness or hesitation. It was simply a recognition of, yes, this is my person, and that feeling was mutual. Story 58. Even during intense arguments, I was always happy and relieved to see them. It is okay to have disagreements and not like them for a while, and then come back together. Story 59. Not sure if I have ever been in love. There has been a great affection for someone, but love, as I perceive it, hasn't come my way. Story 60. Girlapops transformed from a prim and proper introverted girl to an extroverted and wild girl when she is with him. I honestly didn't know her back then. Story 61. She cried, and it made me cry without even knowing the reason. That was the first time in my life that I was so empathetic to someone. Story 62. I saw my boyfriend smile and was absolutely amazed. I would describe it as a devilish smile mixed with pure childish joy. I knew I was in love because I couldn't stop thinking about it. Story 63. I have experienced romantic love in many different forms. However, the first time I was truly in love was during a brief 3-month relationship. She had just graduated from college and was moving far away, so we knew it wasn't going to work. We understood that we had only a short time to spend together, and it was genuinely great. I have not experienced such a freeing love since, but I am grateful to have experienced it at all. Story 64. When I held my sweet baby girl in my arms for the first time, that was true love. Nothing can compare. Story 65. Those times before she cheated, I gave her a second chance, but it was not the same as before. We are still together until today. Story 66. I have experienced love repeatedly. It almost always feels the same, but perhaps that is only because I have not yet experienced the real deal. Story 67. When I started to believe they saw the real me and not the version I wanted people to think I was, I suppose that was all I ever wanted from love. Just someone who sees me. That love wasn't meant to be, but I like to think maybe someday I'll find it elsewhere. However, I'm still in love with the first person, which is very confusing. Story 68. 17 years old. I remember listening to the song Grenade by Bruno Mars, thinking the guy was foolish. No girl is worth violently exploding over or throwing your hand on a blade. Then I met this girl, Katie. We were in several classes together and I fell hard. I would have paid money just to breathe the same air as her. I basically worshipped the ground she walked on. I used to imagine scenarios where I would jump in between her and the gunman, using my body to catch the bullets. I would confess my feelings as I bled out, and she would kiss me right before I died. The Bruno Mars song seemed a little more reasonable to me after that. Story 69. It's hard to pinpoint when it happened. I likely realized it well after the fact. It was a gradual process. I became increasingly comfortable around them. They made me happy. I opened up to them, and I felt upset when we were apart. One day, I just realized it, and we've been together for 20 years now. They are my best friend. Story 70. When I realized I wanted to make their lives better regardless of how it made me feel. It wasn't about me. It was about them. Story 71. If I had to get onto the highway to see her, it's too far. I was catching flights to go see her, and most of them were on standby. Story 72. High school was the only time I truly felt it. Every relationship after that was just being with someone, doing things together, having sex, and providing support, but I never experienced that same feeling again. Story 73. When we spent all night sitting in the car, riding around and talking, it never got boring. I never felt tired, and I never wanted it to end. Story 74. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I felt good, as if I didn't have to worry anymore. It was simply pleasant to breathe, think, and live. It didn't last, but I truly loved her in that moment. Story 75. When she did things that I would do without having done them before, like eating the garlic and other ingredients in a jar of pickles, not just the pickles themselves. Story 76. Sometimes I wish I could experience that feeling. However, I do not have it in my body. I have recently found out that many people do not experience that feeling at all. Story 77. When she told me we were not a good match and should part ways, my heart started to ache. Story 78. When I saw my first pair of breasts in person as a teenager, it began a true love affair. Through large ones and small ones, I have loved them all. Story 79. I realized it when my first serious girlfriend wanted to break up. We had been together for 8 years, and it surprised me. Story 80. I still don't know if I truly love him, but I cherish his presence like that of my family. Almost every conversation reminds me of him. Story 81. That time I pulled my pants down and sat on a cake because the chair was low. I was exposed. Little Alex Horn. Story 82. A professor asked me if I was a boy or a girl and forgot his grandson's name before I made one of the most important decisions of my life. Story 83. I am pretty sure my wife and I have some sort of telepathic connection. Earlier, I had a song in my head, and while we were tidying the house, she started singing it. Story 84. When I reflect on the times I thought I was in love, it seems ridiculous. However, true love is real. Story 85. When she was going on a 7-hour drive during the winter, I was deeply concerned about her safety. Not that I don't care about my friends, But when I hear they are going on a long drive, my first instinct isn't to worry about them like I'm their mother. I was anxious until I received a text saying she made it safely. Story 86. Things that annoy me when other people do them, I didn't mind when she did it. I even found it to be charming. Story 87. When I was in ninth grade, I felt affection for a girl, but I don't think it was love. Now, it's really hard for me to fall in love. Story 88. When I realized that I would rather put in more effort, be vulnerable, accept my partner for who they are, and work through our challenges together than give up and move on. Story 89. I started humming the Super Mario Bros. Theme song. He joined in, and the next thing I knew, we were having a karaoke session in the middle of my living room and doing the robot while giggling like children. I knew right then and there that I had met my person. Story 90. When I listen to love songs, I want to scream and cry because I'm so in love. I feel so loved. Every part of me feels cherished, and I cannot stop smiling. Story 91. I started seeing her in my dreams quite a few times. I found myself wondering what she would think about it in various situations or while I was working. It was just sheer overthinking and unnecessary thoughts. Story 92. When I saw her passionately recite a poem she wrote a long time ago in a deliberately silly slam poetry style, it reminded me of a scene from 22 Jump Street. She performed it to emphasize how absurd rent prices were at that time. Story 93. I was on the fence about 2 months into our relationship. She lived 3 hours away, and since I work 40 hours a week, I could only see her on the weekends. I always made the drive happily, despite it taking a toll on me after the 5th time I drove out. That should have been the first telltale sign. But on the 7th time, we spent the whole weekend together and made more great memories in that one weekend than in the whole rest of the relationship. When it was time to go, we said our goodbyes, but before we did the usual hug, we kind of just sat there for 5 minutes, looking into each other's eyes, both of us very poorly trying not to break down in tears. We hugged for 10 minutes straight that night. Before I even left the small town she was in, I was already sitting in a puddle of tears, very unready to drive 3 hours away from her back home. I know crying sounds normal, but for me, I've never really been able to feel emotions, which makes it hard to connect with people. So feeling that sadness so heavily struck me like a book. To put the cherry on top, as I left the town, a song came on called Repeat Until Death by Nova Amor. I immediately stopped crying and stared out the window, missing my turn because of how hard it hit. I had to pull over to get the rest of that cry out during the whole song. That became her song. Every time it came on, I thought of her, and all the memories we had played like a highlight reel in my brain for the duration of the song. That was the point where I knew she had to be the one. Out of everyone I've been with, nobody was able to get that out of me except her, and that memory is still one of my favorites to this day. Unfortunately, I grew up being cheated on and abused in every relationship before her, so the absence of chaos in the relationship didn't feel right to me. At my lowest point, I went through heavy self-sabotage and broke up with her because my mind thought it was too perfect to be true. That was a little over a year ago, and it's still the biggest mistake I've ever and will ever make in my life. Looking back on it, I can say with full confidence that she was my first true love, and I hate myself for letting it go so immaturely like that. Nothing will hit me harder than the voicemail I got after the call telling me she's never been happier than with me. I ignored it. I shut her out completely. I was unfair to her, and I truly hate myself each and every passing day because of it. I don't think I'll ever find something like that again. The moral of the story is to think twice, 3 times, 5 times even, before making a decision you may regret for the rest of your life. I learned the hard way, and I've never been the same since. Apologies for the rant, but it felt good to get that out after keeping it hidden for so long. Story 94. September 19th, 2020. I took a lot because I had always hated myself, and my sense of self-worth was non-existent. But that day, I got to live as if I was worth something, and I met a girl who made me feel complete in a way I cannot put into words. This will probably be one of the last things I ever talk about because it annoys others for no reason. It's not their love, it's mine. Story 95. I felt so much for him that the words just flowed out of me. I spent a year trying to express my love in a way he would understand. Story 96. When I felt seen and appreciated, there was a significant shift in my confidence. I was incredibly happy. I couldn't stop thinking about them all day and would always make sure to wish them good night and good morning. Story 97. When we had that awkward moment of locking eyes before we kissed, it had my heart racing. Story 98. I honestly love you all. I've read every single comment, and I'm sobbing. Every one of you is so cute. I should have posted this earlier. Story 99. Had an argument and felt sad until I realized he is sad too. My sadness vanished, and his consideration took its place instead. I know he feels the same for me. That was one of the first times I realized I might actually love him. Story 100. We broke up mutually because of his emotional immaturity. I knew that in the long run it would be better for me to find someone else, but I was desperate to reach out to him. I always knew that I deeply cared for him, and I told him. However, I realized that I don't want to live without him. I know all his flaws, and I love them too. I love him completely, and I want to take care of him and make him happy. Every time I see someone similar on the street, my heart skips a beat. It's been 2 months, and I still catch myself thinking about him. I want him to be happy. I want him to continue going to therapy to work through his issues and trauma. I wish we had met after he had healed. I know he wishes that too. I envy the woman who will be with him when he is ready. I'm glad I didn't realize how much I love him until after we broke up, because I would have never been able to let him go. But there was no chance. I know that, and I grieve that. I always enjoyed being single, but now it's just not being with him, and it doesn't feel the same. Story 101. I was in love when I started searching for him in everyone. I began playing games, specifically Resident Evil, because Leon looks like him and reminds me of him. I customized my character to look like him. I wrote about him and drew him. I even wrote an entire essay about him. When I said I started searching for him everywhere, I meant it, even on those sites I dislike. I saw a guy who looked like him, and I sometimes watch them because his girlfriend resembles me, and it's crazy. I also changed myself for him. I tried. I was in a bad place, but for him, I made the effort. I still carry his baby picture in my wallet, and I miss him so much. Story 102. He wasn't a love interest. He was a work colleague, and we never spoke. We respected each other's space through nonverbal communication. We talked once, and something in the prolonged eye contact I had with him felt like I missed a heartbeat. It felt like a small vibration in my chest, my face softening as I felt seen, calm, and safe, with a relaxed, genuine smile. We never dated, but to this day, when I remember this feeling, I wish him all the best. Story 103. I felt naturally comfortable talking to him. I accepted him and continued to see him the same, despite his wrongdoings and flaws. Story 104. After the second date, I knew I wanted to marry him. After 3 months of dating, I cannot imagine my future without him. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.